He had built everything from scratch, his diner, his staff, his life today. He wasn't the boss today, he was just a customer, blending in, invisible, but invisibility has a price. As he stepped inside, something in the air shifted, words whispered, laughter that didn't reach his eyes, attention he couldn't shake. His heart thumped as he realized, this wasn't about sandwiches or tips, this was about who he was. And who they assumed he wasn't. What would happen when they discovered the truth? Would it shatter his calm, or change everything forever? It was a quiet Tuesday morning, the kind that felt ordinary but carried the weight of years of effort. Marcus, a man in his early 40s, had poured his life into the small diner on the corner of Main Street. Every booth, every counter, every freshly brewed pot of coffee reflected his sweat and dedication to the world. He was the owner, a respected figure in the neighborhood, known for his easy smile and polite manner behind the scenes, though he knew the struggles of being a black entrepreneur in a town that didn't always see him as equal. He walked the diner's familiar path, the clatter of dishes and the low hum of conversation greeting him like an old friend. Cashiers nodded politely, customers chatted without noticing the quiet pride behind his eyes. Marcus had always been careful to blend in when necessary, navigating subtle prejudices with patience and professionalism, but today, he wanted to see something different. Something raw and honest. He wanted to experience his diner as just another customer, not the man whose name was on the sign above the door. As he stepped closer to the counter, a strange unease settled in his chest. Two of his cashiers were whispering, glancing his way, their expressions frozen. Somewhere between surprise and something harder to define. Marcus paused, pretending not to notice, but the weight of their eyes felt heavier than the morning rush ever could. He wondered, were they talking about a regular customer, or had they caught a glimpse of something deeper, something that challenged the assumptions they carried every day? A simple visit for a sandwich was about to become a test of identity, trust, and the invisible lines that divided them, and Marcus could feel it. Today, the diner wasn't just his workplace. Today, it was a mirror reflecting a truth no one wanted to see. Marcus took a slow step closer to the counter, feeling the polished wood beneath his hand. The diner was buzzing with its usual rhythm, but something had shifted in the air. The two cashiers, whom he had trusted for years, weren't simply talking quietly, they were exchanging glances, their whispers sharp and deliberate. He couldn't hear the words yet, but the tone cut through him like a knife. Every instinct told him that what was happening had nothing to do with his ordinary presence as a customer. He forced a calm smile, pretending to browse the menu. His stomach tightened. One cashier's hand hovered nervously over the register, the other's lips pressed together in a thin line of tension. Marcus had faced prejudice before, subtle and disguised in polite smiles, in passing remarks, in assumptions about his capabilities, but this felt different. It wasn't hidden, it was raw, and it was happening right under his nose. In the place he had built from the ground up. A man at a nearby table laughed loudly, breaking the momentary tension, yet it only amplified Marcus's awareness of every movement around him. He noticed a customer whispering to another, stealing glances in his direction. He wasn't sure if it was his imagination, or if something about him made people uneasy without reason. A sudden weight pressed on his chest, and he realized he could no longer pretend this was just a normal morning. Then came the words. He didn't catch the start, just fragments. He doesn't belong, can't handle it. But it was enough to make him freeze, enough to make his pulse spike. His mind raced. Were they talking about him as the owner, or were they seeing him as someone else, someone they assumed was unworthy, invisible, or threatening? The diner, a place that had always felt like a sanctuary, now seemed to shrink around him. Marcus stepped closer to the register, careful not to reveal his identity. The whispers stopped abruptly, replaced by a silence so sharp it made his ears ring. He could see the hesitation in their eyes, the split-second realization that something, or someone, was different than they expected. His heart pounded. Would they apologize? Would they continue? Or would this moment explode into something that exposed every prejudice that had been simmering quietly in plain sight? Every second felt stretched, heavy with anticipation. Customers began to look up, sensing the shift, as if the diner itself held its breath. Marcus's stomach churned. He wanted to step forward, to confront the ignorance with the truth, but part of him knew that revealing himself too soon could change everything in ways he wasn't ready for. And then, just as he opened his mouth to move closer, one cashier leaned toward the other, their words a sharp, unmistakable jab aimed at someone they assumed was powerless. Marcus felt the surge of 1,000 past injustices flash in his mind, a lifetime of encounters where identity dictated treatment. His hand froze on the counter. The moment had come. Would they ever see him for who he truly was, or would the assumptions they carried blind them entirely? Marcus took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm of emotions inside him. Every instinct screamed to reveal the truth, to strip away the assumptions, and force them to see him as he really was. But the diner felt like a trap now, every familiar detail magnified into evidence of a world that still judged him. Before knowing him, he leaned slightly closer to the counter, just enough to catch the words that had been whispered so carelessly his stomach twisted as the cashier muttered, loud enough now for him to hear clearly, "I can't believe he owns this place. Doesn't even look like someone who could run it." The other chuckled nervously, glancing at the customers as if seeking validation. Marcus's fists clenched. Every ounce of patience he had cultivated over decades was being tested in an instant. Time seemed to slow. He could feel every heartbeat, every flush of anger, every pang of humiliation that history had carved into him. The whispers became sharper, more biting, a verbal echo of the prejudice he had spent his life navigating. For a moment, he imagined turning and walking away, letting the injustice linger in silence, but something inside him refused. He straightened, his presence unmistakable now, though he had not said a word. The room shifted. Customers paused mid-bite, mid-sip, sensing the tension before the revelation. Marcus's heart pounded. Would they acknowledge the truth, or retreat into the comfort of their assumptions? For a split second, silence swallowed the room, and then the question lingered, would they acknowledge the truth, or retreat into the comfort of their assumptions? For a moment, the diner felt suspended in time. The whispers had ceased, replaced by a heavy, almost suffocating silence. Marcus stood there, the weight of their assumptions pressing against him, yet he also felt a strange sense of release in that instant. He was no longer invisible. He was no longer reduced to what others assumed he could, or could not, be. The cashiers' faces flushed with a mix of shock, embarrassment, and uncertainty. Some avoided his gaze, others fumbled for words that wouldn't come. Marcus didn't yell, he didn't berate them. Instead, he let the truth speak for itself, a quiet, undeniable testament to the life he had built and the resilience that had carried him this far. The diner, once just a workplace, had become a stage where prejudice collided with reality, and reality won. As he moved through the restaurant, taking in the customers and staff alike, Marcus realized the deeper lesson. Racism isn't always violent or overt. Often, it's in the assumptions, the whispered judgments, the small disbeliefs that diminish people quietly. And yet, every act of truth, every moment of visibility, chips away at it. He had faced the prejudice head-on, not with anger, but with presence, with proof of who he really was. Walking out of the diner later, Marcus felt a mixture of exhaustion and hope. He knew this wasn't the end of the struggle, not for him and certainly not for countless others navigating a world that still judged too quickly. But it was a reminder. Change begins the moment someone refuses to be invisible, the moment someone claims their space unapologetically. So the question lingers, echoing far beyond the walls of this diner: how many times do we allow assumptions to define the value of a person before we choose to see the truth? And more importantly, what will you do the next time you witness it?